I saw the movie, The Crow, opening night, Mann's Chinese Theater. It was like my third week in LA. And my friends took me to see the film. I walk in, and we expected the theater to be totally deserted because it seemed to me like a fairly obscure, almost art house film. The theater is packed. I was so enthralled with the first Crow.
It was deeper than most movies in a way because you were dealing with life and death and that kind of sorrow and loss. And I thought it was very touching.
I was immediately impressed during the film by the look of the film and Brandon Lee's performance, which was incandescent, absolutely lit from within.
I happened to be at the first public screening, and it struck me that the kids in this audience, afterwards I was listening to them talk, and one of the kids said, finally somebody made a film for us.
We knew getting into a second picture that we would be stepping on a really cherished film and character in a manner in which we felt we had to, in a sense, improve, if it was at all possible, and better ourselves.
Really, the mandate for this film was make it the same but different.
Nobody wants them to retread or just, bigger explosions just aren't going to do it. There has to be something fresh brought to the story. It has to expand in some way. Otherwise there's no reason to continue it.
When I went online with all the fans of the first movie, the thing that everybody said was, well, it can't be Eric Draven, it can't be Eric Draven. As long as it's not Eric Draven, we'll watch a new story. And once I assured them that it wasn't Eric Draven, then they were all interested. Basically the elements that we kept were that somebody had to die a violent death and that they had to lose someone that they loved in the process of that death. And we didn't want to tell just the story of a man who lost his lover again. So in this instance, we thought, well, what's the only thing that could possibly be more heart-wrenching than, somebody losing his fiancée? And then we thought, well, that would be, somebody losing his child. And so that's kind of the genesis for our new character, Ash, to come back in this movie.
I sort of thought, well, where can you really take it from here? And then I basically came up with what interested me about the idea was that that we could create. I was really interested. I thought something they hadn't really gone into in the last movie was what it felt like to be the character. What if you really were dead? And so then it struck me the way to do that, the way to really highlight who he was to create something of a drama with a love story.
I mean, it was obvious that kind of the gothic romance is a huge element of the first movie, but if you look at it, really the romantic element of the first film takes place in the past. And what we decided to do was make the romance in this film take place in the present. So we then had to create a love story, an unrequited love story between Ash, who's come back from the dead, and Sarah, who's an adult.
I think there's something really passionate about that. And the whole notion of her being in love with something that's dead is really interesting, and the fact that their love is so alive and so pure, the juxtaposition between the two is really interesting.
I saw you drowning. My father shoot you and your son.
How did I survive?
You didn't. You're dead.
No! No!
I really declined to be involved with this production, from the writing end of it, because I was such good friends with Brandon that every time I sat down to write something, it just, Brandon was like right in front of me on the page. Every time I went to go write something for the character, I was thinking, well, how would Brandon deliver this line? And so I couldn't do it.
Well, I think the casting of the new Crow character as such was one of the most important decisions, because whatever happened, he would be compared to Brandon Lee, if you like, because people have so much love for him. So I knew that whoever we cast would have to be, I thought, very different. So at first I probably met up with 200 or 300 people, and they were all great people. It's just that some of them seemed to come from the point of view they would be son O'Brandon or brother O'Brandon, and I just thought that was a bad decision. So I then saw Vincent in this film, La Reine Margot.
There's this one moment where he is looking out of this window and there's firelight that lights his face, and then he pulls back into the shadows so that he won't be seen, and it's a moment that's so Crow-esque, if you will, that I saw that moment and I was with Tim at the time, and we knew he was the guy.
I think I feel a little bit shy, you know, regarding that. I feel a little bit shy, especially after Brandon Lee. He was good. He was really good. He was a good actor. So.
But you said it yourself. This is a different story.
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's The Crow.
Brandon had this kind of electrical physicality about him, and Vincent, I don't know, the camera just seems to be drawn to Vincent for some reason. He's just a really strong presence on the screen.
They both have this odd, strange kind of androgynous sensuality to them that, I mean, for some reason, both men and women seem to like both of them.
But I think what's interesting about the character as well is that he's not your average sort of rippling, muscled action hero, and that he has a feminine quality to him, and I think that's what appealed to a lot of people about The Last Crow. I mean, basically, to put it bluntly, you have a guy in drag, you know, running around.
I guess I'll be, doing men in black lipstick for the rest of my life now.
This character is much less of a kung fu fighter or whatever the term is. He's a lot less hard like this, but he goes through a lot of physicality, and I thought Vincent would be able to bring a physicality to the movie.
Been jumping a lot. It's okay. That's not the most difficult. You know, let's face it. I mean, it's like you have to take pleasure of that. You know, suddenly you're sort of going back into your childhood.
Vincent, you all right? Yes. Okay.
My God, like 1 week, on Monday I drowned him. Tuesday I dragged him across the back lot for several hours, like by a rope around his neck. Thursday I hung him, and Friday we whipped the shit out of him when he was being hung.
Remind me of the scene?
Yeah.
The scene you play young man being hung. That's my truck. My truck. I'm going to cheat also.
I think that's the way to do it. I know whenever I've done those rigs. Have you done these rigs before? Have you ever done anything like this rig?
Never.
Because whenever I've worked with them, it's good is to sort of put your head back and to fight with your back, which is really hard work.
You did that?
I haven't done it personally, but whenever I've worked with people, I've encouraged them to do that.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Thing he does.
What's that?
When? Well, this is maybe an obsession then. One of your obsessions.
No.
Speed! Ready, and action! How's it hanging, ass? Huh? Give me that. Thanks.
I felt that the villains in the first movie were really spectacular, particularly Michael Wincott. Really, a movie like this, a genre movie, whether it be Batman or The Crow or Superman or anything like that, they're only as good as their villains. So in this film, we had to construct a kind of group of villains that were as colorful.
I'm not gonna sit here with a fucking target on my chest. I'm gonna take this motherfucker out.
I've been a huge fan of Iggy Pop's forever. I really wanted him in the first film, but for various reasons he couldn't be in it.
Let's rehearsal. Let's see it really reveal that fight. Let's see that look in your eye.
I've known Iggy for about 10 years, and he was like, for me, was like, and I know for Alex McDowell, just like a teen idol as such. You know, he was just like, he was the grandfather of punk, which was the music we all grew up on.
I've seen Iggy in concert like 15 times, and I really liked, all the kind of neo ballet things that he did, and just the pure energy that he brought to everything.
There was a wildness to his music, which I don't hear these days. Even when people tell me it is, I don't believe it. So I thought if we could get him into the movie, that would be a great thing.
I laced some references, some not so veiled references to some of his songs in the description, in the narration of the script. And he picked up on it, and it's the first thing he said when he met me is there's this, it describes this one character as, I Want to Be Your Dog, which is one of his songs, and I was just kind of hoping to subliminally influence him to take the role. But once he came on board, then we worked together and made it kind of uniquely Iggy.
People have for years wanted to see him in a role which would show him off to his best. That's my view. I've always wanted to see a movie. You know, we've all seen flashes of him in movies, but never quite seen the true Iggy.
Well, you know, considering that I do things like have my balls set on fire, get thrown in a pond, right, and drowned, and snort huge lines of black cocaine from the top of a motorcycle adorned with a naked blonde chick being fucked in the ass by death. It was a stretch.
The cat. Rehearsal.
It was really fun being a villain. I think villains are the best people. I hate good guys.
And you're going to do bad things to yourself, which is always a way of overcoming pain, I think.
Tim Pope really taught me how to act, basically. I've done 8 or 9 pictures, I guess, before this, and pretty much just staggered through them a bit like a fish out of water, but you got to start somewhere.
He goes down.
He told me he was going to make me the exception to the rule that rock stars can't act.
Your head's back rolling, you're flying like a birdie. Well, I wondered then if you could just like fly, just like, oh, do you know what I mean? Sure. Like, okay, you're flying like a birdie.
Marking 3, Mark. And play back.
I think a lot of people assumed that in making the sequel we would introduce a kindler, gentler Crow, and that there would be Crow Happy Meals and McDonald's and stuff like that. And basically, Tim and I both conspired to make this leaner, meaner Crow, and Tim just said there's no way in hell that this Crow is going to be kindler and gentler, and so Tim is totally perverse.
I was very keen with this movie that it would not be The Crow 2 or A Crow 2 as such. This would be The Crow City of Angels, and that was very important to me in terms of my philosophy about how to make the film.
First thing I said when I came on this project, or one of the first things, was that I wanted to move it out of Detroit because I felt it was important at the very beginning of the film to establish that we were telling a different story. So the only link between the first film and this film is Sarah, who is now an adult. And what we did is we decided to have Sarah kind of running from her past. And so she's moved as far away as she can go metaphorically. She's gone to the edge of the sea, to the City of Angels, to kind of escape her past. But of course, her past ends up following her. And so the City of Angels is our metaphorical Los Angeles in the same way that the first movie, the city of the first film, wasn't really Detroit. So for all these kind of key, symbolic, potent icons, we decided we wanted to use different symbols. We decided that we would have this character ride a motorcycle because it seemed like motorcycles were just kind of something that is very Los Angeles, whereas cars are something that's very Detroit. So we have a lot more motorcycles in this film. And the costumer came up with this amazing coat, which when Ash takes off down the street on his bike, the tails of the coat kind of fly out like the wings of a bird, and it's this great metaphor. We even talked about in the first film, Eric Draven crawls out of the ground when he comes back to life. And we decided that in this film, he would come out of the water, that it would be a different kind of birth.
Because I love the idea of water, I learned to dive because I see it as being this idea of falling into yourself, if you like. Because the whole movie exists in sleep, in dreams, in nightmares. So we wanted to create that internal feeling. So that was hence the idea of water. I used the crowd with the Day of the Dead at the end. It's like water as far as I can see.
It's like a dream. But also you're one of them as well. You're a freak. You're a fucking freak. It's like looking into a big mirror of yourself. Death. You are deaf, and it's drunk. You're drunk in your death. You have to be drunk. And then this music builds. It's beautiful. This music it builds this sort of psychedelic sort of thing. So as the things are going into you, and you fall, it'll be amazing.
Okay, everybody moving!
Okay, go, Vincent.
Action!
Oh, shit.
Graffiti in LA is so familiar, like in all cities. So what we decided to do was to remove graffiti wherever we saw it and replace it with our own. So very early on, I contacted a designer called David Carson, who designs a magazine called Raygun. And one of his kind of design obsessions is how far can you push legibility and how far can you advance the typography to the point where people can just about read it and get it. And at the same time, I was looking at 60s Chicano gang graffiti, 60s, 70s kind of very, where it had developed to a point where it really was illegible. It was its own codified language. So I got him together with this reference material that I had found, asked him to design a typeface. And he came up with something really fast that was absolutely appropriate. It was based on some kind of alphabet. Every now and again you can recognize a letter. And then what we did was pass it on to this local tagger called Ricardo. On the whole, he single-handedly went into areas, 300 feet of running concrete bridge, and within a day had graffitied the whole thing.
We decided that the first movie had a lot of rain, and that what we would use as our metaphor for kind of the unconscious would be just smog. So there's this ever-present pall throughout the film, and we weren't going to have any rain in the course of the movie.
And it's a challenge. There's never really been a film shot at night that doesn't use water as an element for reflection. It's just a classic thing. But when we were scouting downtown locations, a very recurrent image to me was just broken glass all over the place. So early on I decided that we could use broken glass to do the same thing as water, but it would have a far more potent narrative kind of message in it. We decided on a palette that came from sodium light. The kind of idea that street light is the light of the city. There's no exterior light, there's never any moon. That we've got this blanket of smog over the whole city. So nothing penetrates that. And our logic in the broad stroke was that the street lights bounce into the smog and filter back down into the city.
The lighting of the film is sort of this sulfur yellow that sort of looks like people's skin is like jaundiced and set on fire. And, once you're in the lighting and you see all this broken glass and these, remnants of these old cars, and it's very, very easy to slip into the character in the world.
The production designer has to provide a framework for the characters in the film. I think that's primarily it. It's that and controlling the look of the film from start to finish. You have to kind of live in the film. You have to do this kind of method design thing where you put yourself inside each character's head one by one and you kind of invent a backstory for them that's not necessarily described in the script in order to give yourself the background that you need to in this case in Sarah, to find out why she's in this space and what she would put in this space. We kind of built a story where she lives out of 2 suitcases, doesn't live anywhere more than 6 to 8 months, keeps moving, so her property is absolutely minimal, and therefore what she's moved into here, there's not a piece of furniture here that we're saying that she bought or brought off the street or anything. She just moves into a place and inhabits it, disturbs it as little as possible, puts her own pieces, her own life into it where she needs to. That's the example, I think, is that we just build a backstory.
I think that a lot of the people that watch The Crow were the kind of kids like I was when I was a kid, who were maybe out of the mainstream for one reason or another. They weren't the jocks, they weren't the super brains kind of thing. They were the kids that slipped between the cracks. But I think there's actually really a majority of those kids, but nobody realizes that they're a majority. They're kind of a hidden majority.
I think the audience of The Crow is really cool, and they're extremely intelligent. They know what they want, and, you know, delivering the goods plus more is what makes the film really exciting to do.